When did President Clinton's education begin?
Well, almost as soon as he took office. The war for the Greater Middle East is not simply a series of actions hatched in Washington, with U.S. forces then sent off to bomb or invade or occupy some far-off place, Americans at home thereby improving their limited knowledge of the developing world. The other side also hatches plots and undertakes actions. And during Clinton's 2 terms in office, radical Islamists mounted a series of retaliatory attacks against the United States.
Can you remind me what they were?
Sure. On February 26, 1993, barely a month after Clinton became president, terrorists detonated a truck bomb in the parking garage under one of the World Trade Center towers in New York City. Although the explosion failed to topple the towers, it killed 6, injured more than 1,000, and caused widespread panic. In his weekly radio address the following day, the president made brief reference to the bombing as a, quote, tragedy.
Americans should know we'll do everything in our power to keep them safe in their streets, their offices, and their homes. Feeling safe is an essential part of being secure, and that's important to all of us.
What the president did not do was to place the bombing in any kind of political context. By implication, it was a random act of inexplicable violence.
Was that it?
No. The next attack came 3 years later in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. The U.S. Air Force had converted a group of high-rises called Khobar Towers into living quarters for personnel based in Saudi Arabia. On June 25, 1996, a truck parked near one of the buildings detonated, tearing the face off of building number 131. 19 Americans were killed. Hundreds more were injured. Speaking at a press conference, President Clinton promised to bring the perpetrators to justice, declaring that, quote, anyone who attacks one American attacks every American. He also ventured to place the attack in a larger context, albeit one long on generalities and short on specifics. This attack underscores the struggle of all those who share tolerance and freedom and security. Our struggle at the end of the Cold War is to deal with these new perils. The rogue states like Iran and Iraq, the smugglers who would poison our children with drugs, those who deal in sophisticated weapons or weapons of mass destruction, chemical, biological, and nuclear, and terrorists in the paralyzing grip of religious, ethnic, and racial hatred. A subsequent Pentagon investigation concluded that the 2-star Air Force general in command at Khobar Towers had failed to maintain adequate security. So Washington ordered U.S. personnel moved to a more remote location in the Saudi Arabian desert. In terms of basic policy, nothing changed.
Were there more incidents to come?
Sadly, yes. 2 years later, on August 7, 1998, massive truck bombs demolished the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. Extensive casualties resulted, with hundreds killed and thousands wounded. The vast majority of victims were local residents, however. In all, 12 Americans died. At a memorial service honoring the victims, President Clinton explained that, quote, terrorists target America because we act and stand for peace and democracy, because the spirit of our country is the very spirit of freedom. And he continued, it is the burden of our history and the bright hope of the world's future. We must honor the memory of those we mourn today by pressing the cause of freedom and justice for which they lived. We must continue to stand strong for freedom on every continent.
I'm sure the families of those killed appreciated this sentiment, but wasn't Clinton being slightly disingenuous?
Are you implying that the U.S. commitment to peace, democracy, and freedom on every continent is not quite as thoroughgoing as the president implies?
Well,
of course, Clinton was telling Americans what they liked to hear. In so doing, he was not telling them what they needed to hear. What they needed to hear was that the U.S. efforts to determine the course of events in the Islamic world was causing a backlash. That backlash was taking the form of periodic attacks meant to challenge the U.S. presence in the Middle East, not its notions of peace, freedom, and democracy.